$10.9 billion a year is spent on mental health in workplaces.
Wow.
The cost of presenteeism is as much as $34 billion a year for Australian organisations. So that's not absenteeism where people don't even bother turning up to work. They're bothering to turn up, but they're just not engaged.
Welcome to the Get Invested podcast, where we share great conversations with experts from all walks of life to uncover their secret know-how and where they invest their time, their skills and their money, and the benefits that this has created. You see, the truth is that everyone invests. Every minute and every day we're investing our time, our skills, our energy and our money in something. Some of us are investing consciously, some unconsciously, sometimes for good, sometimes for bad, and sometimes for no impact. Get Invested will help you to start living by design, not by default. I'm going to help you to make it happen, not let it happen. You'll hear the top tips on how you can live with conscious intent so that you can live more, work less, and leave a living legacy by investing now. Listen to the show to discover the top tips on how to get started, make the most of your investment journey, and ultimately to be living your dream, not someone else's. More episodes can be found on iTunes or at bushymartin.com.au/get invested. Thanks for listening, and now let's get invested. Welcome, freedom fighters. It's Bushy back for this week's episode of Get Invested. And as usual, I'm going to start by challenging you with a number of questions. So let's kick off. Do you love your work? Are you pumped to leap out of bed every morning? Or do you groan, hit the snooze button, and just hope the world will go away or that the weekend's finally arrived? Are you constantly feeling stressed, anxious, frustrated and angry? Do you feel like you just never have time to do anything outside of work? And if you do, you're just too buggered and tired to do anything about it. Are you focusing on the wrong things all the time, meaning that you see things either better or worse than they actually are? And do you know what your real values are? What's really important to you now? And finally, why is it that many people keep chasing a new job, a career or a business, thinking that the grass is going to be greener on the other side, and then throw themselves into it only to find that they're no better off? Well, today's guest will help you to find the answers to all of these questions and many more. Ruth Morgan is a career crusader who helps you to optimise your career. As a performance and career wellbeing coach, she specialises in working with you to elevate your performance and optimise your well-being and the well-being of the organisations that you work in. She's had 25 years' experience in the executive recruitment and career transition industries, and she supported you and people like you through all phases of your career in a step-by-step process that embeds strategies that will enable you to enjoy healthy, sustainable and high performance. You see, Ruth believes that a career should add to your life, not detract from it, making it essential to align your career with your real passion and your purpose. Ruth challenges you to take an honest look at what's working and what's not, and to have a wake-up call before you actually have a wake-up call. While this can be a very confronting process, it's also very empowering, as she helps you to uncover patterns in your career that could be either preventing you from reaching your potential and or creating excessive stress. You see, Ruth's mission is to elevate your performance and your enjoyment so you can push the limits in a sustainable way and have both the energy, the stamina and the clarity of thought that will set you apart from the competition. Her commitment is that you leave her programs energised and have gained an improved career satisfaction, performance, and improvement in your overall life well-being. In other words, you're left feeling inspired and inspiring. Now, I was lucky enough to work with Ruth starting about 20 years ago, and we were both fortunate to spend some time with Andrew Banks, who, for many of you, would have seen him as a key player in the current TV show, Shark Tank, where we both enjoyed a very common interest, and that was to help people become successful in their career while also enjoying a sustainable lifestyle. Now, while we've both gone on slightly different but parallel paths, we're still effectively doing that. Now, Ruth does that by working with you inside your work, whereas my business know-how does it outside the work and helps to build and improve your lifestyle so that ultimately you can enjoy freedom. So look, I really want you to enjoy today's episode. You're going to find some really fantastic, actionable steps that can improve your life right here, right now. So please grab yourself a cup of coffee, sit back, and have a fantastic listen to Ruth Morgan. Welcome back, Freedom Fighters. It's Bushy Martin here from the Get Invested podcast show. And today I've got the real pleasure of talking to a long-term friend of mine, Ruth Morgan. Ruth and I go back nearly 20 years, which is a bit scary for both of us. But and we both had the, I think, the unusual opportunity to have been grounded in spending some time with the infamous Andrew Banks of the Shark Tank fame back in the Morgan and Banks days, Ruth. So, and while we both share a pretty common interest in helping people with their careers, we've taken slightly different, divergent roles in doing that. So, welcome aboard, Ruth. Can't wait to have a good chat.
Thank you for having me, Bushy. I'm excited to be talking about this topic and certainly sharing it with your, group of people that are, obviously very focused on their careers and achieving success, which is fabulous.
Awesome. Now, Ruth, for those that don't know you, can you just sort of give us a rundown on who you are and what you do?
Yeah, sure. Well, I'm a single mum with 2 teenagers, so a few grey hairs these days, but all in all, they're pretty good. They're pretty good company, actually. And I've started my business this year, but prior to that, the last 30 years have primarily been involved in the career space. So whether it's been in recruitment and executive recruitment and then career transition for a period of time as well, which you might not have aware of, I spent 18 months working for a career transition organisation, which was primarily helping people at a time where they'd been made redundant. So it's great to sort of go to the other side of the fence and support people from that perspective as well. So, a long time working with people. And I guess, when I very first started working, when I look at what people would sort of gravitate towards me for, it would always be for career advice, even from right at the beginning, when they were running into problems with their manager or couldn't understand the politics in an organisation or, just wanted to change careers. So it's always been something that's been on the radar for me. And recently I've done a few exercises that I do with clients in my coaching business now to really help them join the dots to find out what their ideal career path is. And that certainly sort of cast a bit more perspective on why I took the path I took.
Yeah, okay. Well, let's talk in a little bit more detail initially around exactly what you're doing now and the problems that's solving and the solutions that you've come up with to help people in that regard.
Sure. Yeah, look, wellbeing has probably been something that's high on my agenda for a while, and it came together in the careers space when, especially with exec recruitment, I'd placed people or had seen people swap jobs for, about 3 times in a row and had seen these consistent patterns emerging in their career which weren't healthy for them. They'd throw themselves into the job, they'd be spending less time with their family, less time being able to exercise and eat well because they were going to all these networking events and working long hours and travelling. And, they'd always say, oh, look, I'll just, follow this path for 6 to 8 months while I get to know the business and then I'll just scale it back a bit and, change. And, of course, that time never comes. Once you've set that expectation, it's very hard to change. And I started thinking, I've always had the view that your career should add to your life, not take from it.
Yep.
And so when I would see these people work really hard to get these jobs, have so much to offer, and then really, they'd be on this road to burnout or career fatigue or just resentment, or or it was going to take its toll on their health or their family. And I thought, the mix just isn't right. And I guess I grew up in a household where, my dad wasn't happy in his career, and I also saw the impact it took then on the rest of the family and on my mum. It was a very stressful environment, and my mum actually ended up dying at 63, which is a very young age. And I put that down primarily to the stressful home environment, which, bless him, because Dad's now passed away as well, but was mainly caused by Dad not being happy in his career and coming home and expressing that frustration at home. So for me, that passion about getting that mix right and, not having your career impact health in such a negative way was reinforced then in my recruitment career when I saw so many people just getting the mix wrong.
Well, I think it's a really good observation and a great niche that you can assist with people with, because I would talk to people every day who are very career minded, but they've just got no time to scratch themselves and constantly stressed. And if they're not working and they're working extremely long hours, then when they do go home, they don't have the energy to have any fun. It's all hard work, and then they're a taximeter on a taxi driver on the weekends, ferrying the family around, and there's just no margin or no space to actually stop and prop and relax. Is that what you're finding?
Oh, look, absolutely. And when you take it, I think the thing that has the biggest impact on people when you start talking to them is, they quickly see what role model they are putting forward for their kids. And, once your kids hit those teenage years, you can actually see what patterns they are adopting from you. And, it's when parents actually see that impact, that's when they really stop and make a change, because quite often, unfortunately, I think we've just grown used to pushing through the pain, prioritising other things above our health. I mean, it used to be a badge of honour to work long hours and not really sleep a lot and, really work yourself into the ground, which sounds crazy, but that's what was going on.
Yep.
But, so people have switched off. They've switched off physically from what's happening to them, the pain they're feeling, their own sort of emotions and all of that. It's a real shutting down. And then they, when they actually sort of see the impact it's having on their family or their kids and how they're setting their kids up for their future, that's typically what it takes before they start to take action.
It's ringing a lot of bells with me personally, Ruth, because, in fact, the reason I ended up working alongside you at Morgan & Banks that many years ago was that I'd had exactly one of those experiences. I was a workaholic. I was working 7 days a week, 14 hours a day. My health crashed. I lost my marriage, which is the biggest cost that I could ever have paid. And it was a bit of a wake-up call for me to start changing things. And it was that crisis really that set me on a different course to make sure that I wasn't going to repeat the same mistake again. And I just talked to a lot of people who end up in a very similar situation and quite often don't learn the lesson. They get back on the horse, as you've just explained, and then they think, well, I have to prove myself initially, so I'll go hard. And then all of a sudden they've created their own expectation they have to live up to, and there is no escape from that. So, that's right. Awesome. Sorry, Ruth, go on.
I was going to say it becomes counterproductive, because the more you keep pushing and not taking a break, the less productive you actually are. And the solution is doing something that's counterintuitive. When you are absolutely flat out, the best thing you can do is just take 5 minutes to, go for a walk, to just stop and breathe, but just to stop. So it's really interesting how, those two sides of the coin come together.
Well, let's dig into that a little bit, because I guess what you've been talking about will be ringing home with a lot of people listening to this. Given the new business that you've commenced, what sort of solutions and what sort of things are you doing then to break that nexus and create better opportunities for them?
Sure thing. The starting point, because career wellbeing is quite a broad spectrum, and at the start of it, it's about checking in with people to make sure that their career is aligned with their values, so they're absolutely doing something they love. Because, having worked in recruitment, quite often people would get to their late 30s or 40s and then they'd come in for an interview saying, I've been doing this all my life, but I don't know why, I don't enjoy it, and I don't know what else I can do. And, so really checking in with people to make sure that their career's in line with their values and their value proposition, so that every day they're doing something meaningful to them. Because if you're just going to work and it doesn't have any meaning or purpose, and you could be somebody who's highly successful, but you're not satisfied because it's not in line with your values. So that's really the check-in point where I start with people to have a look at, what career they're in. Is it in line with their values? What's their value proposition? And I came across a little Japanese model called Ikigai a while ago, which is all about finding meaning and purpose in life. And it looks at plotting out, what are you good at? What do you love doing? What would make a contribution to the world or to others, and what are people prepared to pay for? And when you go through that exercise and actually have a look at what you've written down in all of those spheres, you sort of see that common thread, and it will either, you have that aha moment that you're in the right place or you're in the wrong place. So that's the starting point. And I guess, then there's some practicalities of when you are in a job and what you can do on a day-to-day basis. And I think one of the things is a lot of people wait until they're in the midst of a highly stressful time or a really busy time, and then they start to think, oh my God, I better implement, some wellbeing strategies or some meditation or something, But it's the worst possible time to try and add something new to your routine. So, right now is the best time to just start. And it really comes down to the individual, Bushy. I can sit here and tell people what to do and what works for me, but somebody else might have a completely different sort of psyche or reaction to stress. So depending on how people react to stress depends on what you need to do to alleviate stress. But I really just work with people to drill down and have a look at, what's worked well for them in the past. What are their success strategies that really get them into a space of thinking clearly and, how's it going to work for them? But one of the key things that keeps coming up really is some form of meditation. And I'm not talking about sitting down for an hour every day and just staring into space or, doing that in your office. It could be starting off with just, 5 minutes in the morning, just to clear your thinking and then building on that, because it's when you actually clear a space in your head, that's when new thoughts and ideas come in. And the other beautiful thing about meditation, it's like you're developing a relaxation muscle in the mind. So, our mind has these little grooves in them. Every time something stressful happens and we react a certain way, we're building a stronger neural pathway or a groove in the brain. So every time, we have a stressor, we react the same way. Now, unless we're meditating and starting to build some new neural pathways in the brain, it's going to be very hard not to react that same way every time. So that's another reason why meditation is so useful. And it's a slow burn. It takes a little while to build those new pathways. But, just act alone can make a huge difference to how calm you remain under pressure.
Yeah, it's a very good point. And I guess it's a word that gets bandied around a lot now, Ruth, meditation. And I'd love you to define what meditation means in your context, because, you mentioned meditation, you've got these images of a Tibetan monk sitting up on a hilltop staring at the horizon for hours with his sort of palms outstretched, versus my version of meditation. And I actually use it. I've got a little app called the Calm app, which I just put on for 5 or 10 minutes, and it does exactly that. It turns off the brain, just allows a little bit of space there, and I do feel quite refreshed after using it. Where along that sort of spectrum from my end to the other end, where do you see and how are you defining meditation in that context?
Yeah, look, I think people do make it this, mysterious art and something that you have to invest thousands of hours in before you can become an expert. And, meditation can be something as simple as allowing yourself to daydream, just drifting off. Really, the essence of meditation is just trying to quieten the mind as much as possible without fighting the thoughts, and I find, when the mind is busy, the best way to get out of your head is focus on something physical. So in meditation, where you want to be still, it's just focusing on the breathing. So that will help detract from the thoughts onto your breathing, and then you'll notice that your mind starts to go a bit quiet. Now, thoughts obviously pop into your head, but you just can't catch yourself every now and again and bring your focus back to your breathing. But really, meditation is just simply allowing the mind to have some peace and quiet so that, as I said, those new thoughts can enter, you can form those new relaxed neural pathways. But that's all it is. It's just quietening the mind. Now, a lot of people are so busy that they say, look, I just can't sit there for more than a couple of minutes and my mind's off and I've got to get up and do something. So for people who are like that, I was like that to begin with, and so I just developed a little process that I'd take myself through, and it's, just to really focus in on the breathing, to listen to the sounds around you. Then I do like a body scan from head to toe to relax the muscles going down the body, which is also a fantastic thing for busy executives to do because, as I said before, we switch off from the physical pain in our bodies when we're trying to push through and reach deadlines.
Yeah.
And, one of the big reasons people burn out and have heart attacks is because they're not paying attention to what's going on in their body. So, that little body scan takes 30 seconds. And by the time you've moved through the body and relaxed all of, the muscles, you are in quite a relaxed state. So, that's all it is. And it's amazing how many, bloody courses there are to learn how to meditate. When, it just takes practice, consistency. There's no perfect outcome. I mean, sometimes I'll float a little question through at the beginning and just see what surfaces during the meditation, and it's amazing. Quite often I'll come up with some great ideas for my business and I'll journal once I've finished my meditation. So, if you're looking for some answers, if you are looking to problem solve, just by, floating that question through your mind at the beginning without going into the thought processes around it, you're planting that seed. It's amazing what can come to you in that time of meditation.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, so some great foundation stones there. So give yourself some space to give your mind a bit of a relax. That's a great starting point. Then understand what your values are so that you can then see where you're working is actually aligning with it. And then I guess the next question is, am I able to, if it's not, can I change the environment in, or do I actually need to change the environment by going somewhere else? Is that where it's leading to? Or?
Absolutely. And really there are 7 or 8 career decisions you can make at any one stage. So only one of them involves leaving your current career. You can tweak your role, you can move up, you can move down, you can move sideways, you can check out your options, you can stay exactly how you are and choose to focus on the things that you really enjoy about your job rather than choosing to focus on the 10% that you don't enjoy. Because sometimes people will build up this impression in their mind that their whole job is terrible, when really when you drill down to it, it might just be one person they're interacting with for a few minutes a day, but they're carrying that story in their head all day, you know, and they just keep strategizing around that person. And yet, you know, if they just dealt with that person or really focused on everything else they're doing, it wouldn't be as bad as they think. But also, you know, if you're not totally engaged at work or being fully utilised, you can be a mentor for others. So there's so many different things you can do. It doesn't necessarily mean that you've got to throw your job in. But, you know, cultural fit absolutely is essential. If you're in the wrong place and you've got no hope of influencing the culture, then, yeah, definitely align yourself with a culture that's more suited to you.
I guess that values exercise is one that a lot of people, again, just either don't take the time or don't think about it. Can you give us some examples of people who have stopped and propped and then connected with their values and then where that's led them to?
Well, yeah, me. I mean, it was only... I'm a living, breathing example of what I'm doing in my business. I mean, last August, I had no idea what my values were in life. I knew they were important, but I didn't know what they were. And I did this exercise on this course, and it's with a chap who's here in Adelaide, Michael Johnson. He's called the Mojo Master, and I've actually gone on to do my NLC training with him as well. He's very innovative. And you know, the minute I saw what my values were, I knew, well, I changed tact in my business because I had previously had a different concept for my business that I'd sort of fantasized about for 7 years. I had a website and everything.
Yeah.
And once I saw my values, I thought, I've got to change the business. And, you know, I think it was 3 months later, I resigned from my full-time job and launched my business. So, you know, getting clarity can have a massive impact on your career, on your decision. It makes your decisions a lot easier, really.
Yes.
Because really it's your values that drive a lot of your decision-making and what's important to you.
Well, it's a real moral compass. So, are you happy to share with us then what your values are, and because that's it's a great story in relation to really getting a grip on you distilling what your values are, and how that led you to what you're now doing. Can you just share that with us?
Yeah. Sure thing. And when I talk about values, we're not talking about the altruistic values like honesty, integrity, passion, and all of those. I mean, hell, we all want those, don't we? You know, we all aspire to live our life according to those values. What we're looking at is the kind of stuff that really gets you out of bed in the morning and gets you excited. So for me, you know, the values, my top 3 values were health, growth, and careers. And, you know, so I've got kids, but I hope they're not listening to this podcast, but my kids came sort of 4th or 5th. Down the track, which for a lot of parents can make them feel quite guilty. But it doesn't mean you don't love your kids. It means that, you know, you are focused right now on progressing other areas of your life. Yeah. And typically your voids in life become your values. So things that you wanted and missed out on, or, you know, an area of your life where there was a void or something wasn't working, that tends to draw a lot of your attention, and that can become your values. So, you know, to ascertain your values, I've got an exercise that I take people through, but it's like, you know, what do you spend a lot of your time talking about to people? What apps have you got on your phone? You know, what do you spend your spare time doing? And if I was to look around your house, what sort of themes would I see emerging, you know, in your home? There's a whole lot of questions that sort of gets people looking at their life and where they focus their attention. And, you know, then you group all of those things until you distill it down to sort of 3 to 5 top values.
I love it. That's a great process, because most people are sort of subliminal, but the looking at the obvious and then drilling down into what that's really telling them would be quite eye-opening and mind-opening for a lot of people, Ruth. So it's
absolutely.
Yeah, I love it.
I mean, another good question is, you know, where do you spend your money? And when I look at, you know, anything to do with health, I would easily with my money. I wouldn't need a lot of convincing. Yet if my kids come to me asking for money for something, they've got to put up a fairly good, argument. So it goes to show, doesn't it, where your values.
Yes, I'm on the same page there. When my son comes and asks me, I says, well, you go and earn it. If you want it, go and earn it. So interesting. Must have a similar wavelength to you there, Ruth. No, that's awesome. Now, I guess organisationally then, if I was running a corporation, I was CEO, and I had a bunch of people in the middle management arena that with some degree feeling trapped, which is not uncommon because of those things that you've talked about. And it may only be the 10% of things that are allowing them, because they're focusing on those, sort of blowing that out of proportion. But as a means to really improve the well-being, and the energy, and therefore ultimately the output of an organisation, I could really see some fantastic merits in that. But how do you then convince an organisation to invest some money in that process? Because I can see some very definite personal benefits that will create long-term organisational benefits, but getting someone to sign the cheque to say, hey, Ruth, you really need to sort our team out, I can imagine that being challenging at times. How are you working through that one?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of stats around now on I guess mental health and the impact of mental health at work is a huge, it's in the public domain now a lot. And PricewaterhouseCoopers' most recent report, which is now a few years out of date, so it's probably increased, said that $10.9 billion a year is spent on mental health in workplaces. Wow. The cost of presenteeism is as much as $34 billion a year for Australian organisations. So that's not absenteeism where people don't even bother turning up to work. They're bothering to turn up, but they're just not engaged.
Yes.
They're not motivated. And it has that flow-on effect to other people in the organisation as well. So $34 billion a year. 60% of lost work days a year are attributed to work-related stress.
Yep.
And stress-related claims are costing Australian businesses more than $200 million annually.
Good grief. That's massive.
Some big numbers, huge numbers. And not to mention that, when people are happy and their well-being is fairly high, they are far more resilient, they're more productive, they're more innovative, and it's about sustainable high performance. I was speaking to a manager not long ago, and I hope he takes up this proposal, but he asked me to put a proposal forward to take his top performing sales team through the Global Leadership Wellbeing Survey that I do, because he recognised that, they're doing brilliantly now, but he wants to sustain that. He doesn't want them to burn out.
Yes.
And I thought, what a great leader. I mean, yes, that's a very commercial thing to do as well, but, well-being is about investing in sustainable success, and that's what I focus on. It's like, you might have a great team right now, but if you are pushing them to the limit, or they are pushing themselves to their limits, how long can they sustain it for? And then you've got all of those medical costs, as well as potentially the cost of replacing staff, and we know how costly that is to an organisation. So there's a lot of arguments for organisations investing in the well-being of their staff. And when you look at the commercial landscape and the way things are going, organisations have been process re-engineered to the hilt over the last 10 years. They've stripped back, they run lean. Their only remaining unique asset is the intellectual property that they have in their talent.
Yep.
So why would they not invest in looking after the well-being of that talent, in the mental health of the people in their organisation, especially when that's driving their innovation, and competitive advantage comes down to innovation?
Absolutely. The energy level of an organisation is the key aspect, and there's no doubt about that, Ruth. And you're right. Everything else has been micromanaged within an inch of its life to squeeze every living inch of productivity out of it, and it's not until an organisation recognises that it needs to become a marathon runner instead of a bunch of sprinters, that's it. They're all likely to enjoy that journey, because if we've got a happy team, then we've got a happy business, and if you've got a happy business, you've got happy clients, and that then sort of becomes a growth spiral. If those things are all operating right, but if it's the reverse, then it's a negative spiral downwards. So, very interesting. It must be a fantastic area, and certainly not one that I've heard anyone talk about in the regard that you are around that sustainable wellbeing and creating an energised culture. And I love the way you call yourself a career crusader, Ruth, because I think that's a very good description of exactly what you're doing to help individuals, and by doing so, grow sustainable and happy organisations as a result.
Well, that's it. I mean, ultimately, they retain their staff, they're more productive, and they're more successful. I mean, it was interesting. I was putting a proposal into an organisation a while ago, and one of the board members sort of questioned, why do we need to be bothered about whether our staff are happy? And I know, what a comment.
God.
It's just incredible. But that's, people are so focused on the numbers, aren't they? But they don't realise what makes up the numbers.
It's so true. Now, okay, well, look, I'm going to do a little bit of a pivot now, and we'll return to some of these topics later, but I'm keen to share with the listeners your journey. And what I'd like, and I'm going to go a fair way back here, Ruth, so that people sort of appreciate the pathway that you've come along. And I'd like to sort of just focus on right from as early as you can remember, and probably an important time. It could be at school, it could be after school. Leave it up to you. But interested in what you decided to invest your time, your energy, and your money in, and what. How has that benefited you, and what's been your motivation for making sort of key decisions along your journey today?
Okay. Well, not being the best planner from an early age, Bushy, that'll be interesting to go back and have a look at. And it's always interesting because, my although I talk to people about strategic career decisions, I think too many of mine have been particularly strategic. I guess in terms of what I've consistently invested in, and I guess it's been for different reasons over the decades, but health has always been on the agenda. And I guess it really became a passion of mine when, how long ago was it, 8.5 years ago, I left my marriage. And I'd gone to the gym for many years, but that was the first time I really saw the connection between building physical strength and mental strength. And it was a real survival mechanism for me back then, because I wasn't emotionally strong, going through, all the lovely conversations and legal battles you go through during that phase of life.
Yeah.
And this, building that physical strength really gave me mental strength at the same time. And, to the point where I actually had a dream to enter into bodybuilding competitions, and I engaged a couple of trainers to help me down that path.
Okay.
And about 3 years ago, I think it was, I was training for about 8 months under a trainer. I never worked so damn hard and lost such little amount of weight. And it was, at the age where hormonal things were kicking in and my body just was not responding well to it. So, look, that was not meant to be at that point, but, that was certainly still a big investment and a big focus and a passion of mine. So health has been consistently an investment, and I'm 51 now, and in the last couple of years, I guess the exercise has changed and probably cut back a little bit, and I really am noticing now just how important that physical movement is. And I've taken up dragon boat racing recently, so
awesome.
It's fun, it's outdoors, people do it up until their 70s. You can travel around the world, but it's great upper body strength and and cardiovascular. So I thought, okay, something a bit different, something I enjoy, because you've got to enjoy what it is you're doing, otherwise you won't continue with it.
Yeah.
So that's been a consistent investment. And my personal development, I mean, you know, when I grew up in a household, as I said, you know, my dad wasn't the happiest man, unfortunately. They'd moved over from England, you know, when we were all very young, and Dad was quite high up in the police force, and coming to Australia had to start or change his career in a direction that he really wasn't happy in. And I guess, you know, human behaviour was something that I became very interested in very young, because I was trying to work out, why can't he just be happy, you know, as a little kid? And then the dynamics with my brothers and the different ways they reacted, and my mum reacted the way she did. So that, you know, understanding of why people were the way they were and did things they did kicked off very, you know, at a very young age. And I was just thinking the other day, my very first job, I was out of university, joined this little law firm and was put in charge of their conveyancing function, their property settlement function.
Wow.
But I was thrown into an office full of these young Italian girls who'd been there for years, and my boss kept saying, Ruth, you've got a university degree, you sort it out, in front of all these other women that had more work experience. So you can imagine how that went down. So, you know, from a very first job there were challenges, and you know that's the space that you learn in, don't you? You know, when you're challenged, you are forced to have to evolve. And so I always had a curiosity for human behaviour, and now, I mean, it's, you know, that's why I'm in coaching, because I just love working out what gets in the way for people and helping them get it out of the way. But in order to do that, I think you have to have travelled a fair few paths yourself to understand a lot about human behaviour. So I think they're the two key areas, Bushy, where I've consistently invested in myself. It's been in my own growth and personal development and my health.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'd just pick up on a couple of things that you've mentioned there, Ruth, because I'm a bit like you. Health has been a major driver for me, and mine's as much a reaction to seeing my father destroy himself by not looking after himself physically, mentally, or in any other way, and saying, I'm never going to be like that. So exercise has just become a fundamental part of every day for me. And in fact, if I don't exercise for whatever reason, I'm a grumpy old bastard and not very nice to be around. And but there's an expression I've heard, and it's sort of, when you were talking, it reminded me of this, and I'm just interested in your thoughts on it, and that is that freedom follows discipline. Because reading between the lines in what you were saying, the discipline that you applied to the time when you were looking at the work that you're doing with the trainers and whatnot, and what it does to changing those habits and around what you were talking around with the neural pathways before. Did you find that the discipline and creating those new habits through that then overflowed into your work and everything else that you were doing?
Oh, God, yes. I mean, when I am disciplined around my food, I also find I'm pretty disciplined around my money.
Yep.
So when you are growing that muscle in one area of your life, it has a ripple effect across your life. Absolutely. And that's why I say, you know, quite often with people, if you are looking to, you know, develop a skill in one area of your life, start developing it in another area that's going to be easy to build that foundation, you know, where you've perhaps got a bit more confidence, because then it makes it easier to apply it to that other area of life that might be a little bit trickier, or where you just want to gain a bit of confidence first. But I think, you know, something else that popped to mind, Bushy, when you were talking about discipline leading to freedom, with some of the work that I've done with Michael Johnson, I mean, he talks very much about, unless you are creating challenges in your life, you know, life will create them for you. So you may as well create your own challenges and keep growing and evolving, because that's what we're here to do. And a lot of people just crave security or comfort or ease. And the minute we're always focusing on that, the universal law of balance means that if you are not seeking out discomfort, challenge, change or growth, then the universe will throw things your way that will force you to grow and learn and evolve. So best to keep challenging yourself and choose the challenges that you want.
That's awesome. I'd actually never thought about that the way you've just described it, Ruth. And because I guess I've become a habitual challenger. I'm not happy unless I am challenging myself. But
well, that's awesome.
Well, yeah, it's good. It is good, but at the same token, you're right. I see a lot of people who are constantly seeking complacency and the sort of comfort zone, and yet they're constantly shipwrecked. And it's, I guess, if you're approaching challenge head on, knowing that life is constant change, and therefore embracing it, then and choosing those challenges rather than waiting for those challenges to kick you in the backside, then we get a completely different outcome. That's a really good insight, Ruth. That's a really good insight.
When I heard that, it made sense to me, and I could see in my career times when, because I've been in recruitment for 25 years, I knew what I was doing. I had some good clients, and at times it became a bit complacent about all of that. And when I look back, and I was in that position of, I'm just going to keep it simple. And I can remember saying that, and I reckon it was just before the GFC hit. Yep. And I said, you know what? I don't need to keep chasing all this new business. So I've got my good clients. I'm just going to make it simple and keep working with my lovely, patch of clients. And then the GFC hit. Well, did that ever teach me a lesson that you can't have all your eggs in one basket? But also, and then my job, became at risk. And I think every time I've gravitated towards a job to make things easier, it has never worked out easy. It's always been a challenge. It's not ended, as well as I would have liked. And, I kept thinking, Ruth, you've got this passion to go into your own business, yet you keep gravitating towards employment. Bloody take the risk and go out and do it, because, consistently I was getting that whatever challenges or messages were coming my way that were pushing me in a particular direction. And, when you don't listen to those little whispers, they become shouts eventually.
It's a very good call. Now, just a slight change of tack again then, Ruth, because there's a question I'd like to ask everyone. Can you remember what was the first dollar that you invested? What was it in, and how did that go?
It wasn't my car, because my parents bought my little $500 Datsun when I was young.
I think I had a Datsun 180B as well, but I'm probably a lot older than you, and you probably don't even know what a 180B is, but it was a little matchbox.
And it was purple, and I can remember my boyfriend at the time hand-painted it green.
That's like I couldn't afford chromies, as I used to call them, or mags, so I actually got out the silver paint and painted the rims silver, just so that and chromies on my Mini Minor. I had a Mini Minor at that stage. Can you imagine?
Oh, gee.
So it wasn't a car.
I have never been a great investor, Bushy, and I've always been a good shopper, and I think for me, I moved out of home fairly young, and then I ended up moving to Sydney. So it was probably my investment was in my independence, really. Yep. It was to fund my lifestyle and not just lifestyle, fund my life, to actually create the life I wanted.
Yeah, okay. Well, that's a great segue into something else I'd like to explore a little bit, because both of us, I think, are in the game of asking people, well, what does your perfect life look like, as a means for both of us then to help them, assist them to move from where they are to get there. Talk to us about your perfect life. What's your perfect day, week, year look like, Ruth?
Oh, well, my dream is to, be travelling around the world, public speaking, really, I guess, challenging the mindset of workforces to change the way organisations engage their talent and allow them to perform. So I would love to be, travelling around and speaking on that particular topic. And for me, experience is quite a high value as well. And since I've been out on my own as a single person, I've not really been able to afford travel for me and the kids, and so ultimately I would love to take them to some beautiful places around the world to create those memories, because I just think memories and travel and holiday experiences are things that stay with us for a lifetime. You get excited leading up to it, you relax and enjoy the holiday when you're on it, but then you've got all those memories that you keep reliving, and they can really be valued to you when you are experiencing stress. My ideal life will be to have my beach house down at Tennyson with a swimming pool, entertaining friends, having people drop round all the time, and have a beautiful partner in my life. But be travelling and doing what I absolutely love, and even, really agitating at the exec level and the board level to really change the sort of culture that they want in their organisation, so that they've got, thriving businesses with people that really want to be working there, ultimately highly creative organisations. So that's my dream.
Love the dream. And you know what my next question is going to be, and that is, what are you going to invest in between now and then to make that happen? And I'm talking not just money here. I'm talking skills. I'm talking resources. I'm talking you name it. But in terms of proactively investing in something to make that dream a reality, how do you see that rolling out?
Well, look, it always comes back to investing in yourself and your own personal development so that you can then help others. So absolutely, I want to keep upping the level of personal and professional development I do. There's a beautiful retreat that I saw that was happening in Fiji in October. I just couldn't afford to go along this year, but it's a wellbeing retreat, and it's a whole lot of global coaches and business owners in that wellbeing space. So, to be continuously immersing myself with those like-minded people, and also, furthering my coaching skills. I love psychosomatics, which is that whole link between mind and body. And, the coaching work that I do is emotional balancing work, but when people suppress their emotions, it gets expressed physically,
Yes.
So to be able to identify what's going on with somebody emotionally from the physical pain they're feeling, I just find that fascinating. I love freaking people out when you ask those sort of questions.
Yeah.
So I would love to study and really embed that in the coaching tools that I use as well.
Love
so that's one skill that I think, especially in the corporate space, could be highly beneficial.
Absolutely. It's really interesting you mentioned that, Ruth, because again, I haven't focused on it a lot, but I remember when my good mother, God bless her, first was diagnosed with terminal cancer. When you get in that position, you really start to look and think. And I remember someone, because we saw the normal doctor routine, but we also sought advice from others. And I'll never forget someone saying to me who worked in that space that you do know that your mother's, because it was lung cancer, your mother's lung cancer is a direct result of the fact that she's repressed her feelings for so long. And that rang true because Mum and Dad were great, but Dad was the boss and Mum ran around and picked up and just did what she was told, which is pretty typical of that generation. But she was always biting her lip. She was never really truly expressing what she really felt. And it's really interesting that it would then ultimately manifest in something that took a life over 12 months. So,
absolutely. And it's the same with people being in the wrong career for the wrong reasons. I read a beautiful book, The Spirit, what is it? The Anatomy of the Spirit. And in this book, this woman talks about this dentist who hated being a dentist, but, he earned good money. He was at that stage in life where it was the golden handcuffs. He had to keep getting a good income to support the family.
yep.
And even after she pointed out to him the impact it was having physically on his body, he chose to stay in that profession, and within a matter of years, had developed cancer and died. Now, look, there's no 100%, confirmation of this sort of stuff, but I guess, you certainly do see patterns forming, and it makes sense. And I go back to my mum who, lived in a very stressful environment and died at 63 when there was no family record for breast cancer. My grandparents lived to a good age, so I just find it fascinating. And even when we think we're dealing with a lot of our emotions, it's amazing. There's always something that we're suppressing. And I recently learned a really good little simple 4-step sort of emotional release tool that is really quick and easy to learn. But as I said, the coaching work I do, once again through Michael, is all about emotional balancing and embracing all of those emotions, not trying to hide them. Boys these days grow up and they're taught not to get angry, not to show aggression, it's not good and all of that. Well, over the years, they're going to be suppressing that, and that's going to have a physical impact on them, on who they are as men as well. So, we need to teach people how to allow our emotions. And once again, in the workplace, don't get stressed. It's not good to be stressed, so we don't talk about stress. So we go home and we have a glass of wine or do something, and we're not dealing with the cause of these things, and eventually, they're going to erupt, because what you suppress, you express over a period of time. You can't suppress it forever. No,
and if you bottle it up, and it's probably going to explode rather than leak out too. So, yes, it's
exactly.
Tell me, I'm just picking up on something you mentioned there, and wondering whether you would mind sharing just a little bit. You mentioned that 4-step process. Can you just quickly outline some of those key things? I'm sure some the listeners would get awesome value from just getting an indication of what that might be.
Sure thing. And I picked this up attending a little seminar from the Coaching Institute, who are based in Melbourne, and I went along to this second day because I wanted to see the guy I coached someone, and he ended up coaching me. So I actually got to experience doing this, awesome. And so I know it absolutely. So, the first step is really to identify what emotion is going on. So easily in your day, you can be oblivious to what you're feeling because you're just focused on doing the next thing. So it's actually about stopping and identifying and labelling the emotion. So if you get, you might be anxious about something. So say it's anxiety. So, just having some space to, close your eyes and really welcome anxiety into your body. Sorry, actually you personify it. So you picture it as a little person, as a little part of you, and you label it anxiety. And then you welcome that emotion into your body, because normally we're trying to push it away, ignore it, push it down. So by welcoming it and giving it all the permission to be however it wants to be, and to give it that attention and love, what happens when you are just allowing that emotion to be as it needs to be, you get to a point where all of a sudden that feeling in the stomach or whatever it is just dissipates. And it becomes a very, very calm place. And then you just thank that emotion and let it go.
Okay.
So the weekend I learnt this particular tool, the timing was amazing because I'd received an email that had just triggered off some emotions from 7 years ago. And so for the next 2 days, I reckon I was stopping every 15 minutes to go through that process. Just to release all of those emotions because I didn't want to bury them and have them pop up again later. So the timing was great because it really helped me reinforce that. But that exercise can just take a couple of minutes. It might take 5 minutes, but we can all find 2 or 5 minutes in our day. And even if you don't do it at the time that emotion surfaces, the end of the day, just reconnecting with that emotion and doing it then. And if you can teach your kids, how to embrace anger or frustration or whatever it is and move through those 4 steps and just allow that emotion so that it does go, how amazing would that be? They'll be so well equipped to join the workforce and to, deal with stress and all of that sort of stuff in a much better way than we ever were.
I love that. So if I'm getting angry and frustrated, it's just a matter of picturing a little angry bushy sitting on my shoulder and allowing him to bash me in the side of the head for a few minutes to get that out. Am I thinking of this the right way? Because I'm just sort of trying to apply it in the way that people might do it, and I can see it actually being really beneficial because you're not then just clamping this thing down and then just trying to shut it and it's sort of bursting at the seams to get out. You're actually saying, well, I am angry. And
that's it.
Yeah, I love that. Because I'd take my frustration out in the gym and the hockey pitch.
Which is equal. I think that's good as well, but it doesn't go into a deep level like this does. Like this is actually owning it, embracing it, and allowing it.
Yes, that's brilliant. That is brilliant. I'm getting some great take-homes from what we're talking about today, Ruth.
I'll send you the bill.
Yeah, please, just send me the bill. I absolutely, totally agree. Okay, well, look, I'm loving what we're talking about here because I think you're opening the lid on a subject that people just don't give themselves time to think about, whether it be at the individual level because they're so busy at work, and at the organisational level because it does become all about the numbers. I guess I'm interested in how, given the value that I can see that you bring to the table, how we can create more opportunity for you to open the eyes to people at the individual level and the organisational level to embrace what you're talking about. How can we help you in that regard, Ruth?
Well, I guess one of the things I do offer is a free 20 or 30-minute telephone consult where I take people through like a wellbeing wheel, if you like, that I've developed and help them sort of establish some goals. So that could be a starting point. The other thing I do at a corporate level, I've been accredited in using this global leadership wellbeing survey, which was developed by a couple of psychologists in Sydney. And I think at the moment I'm the only one in Adelaide who's got that accreditation.
Okay.
And that is an amazing tool to bring into an organisation. You can do it individually, and then you can also, consolidate those results as a team to pick up on any cultural themes that are impacting wellbeing. That really helps people. That's where the living well, working well concept comes from, because it's about looking at balance and boundaries and energy and resilience and, whether people have intellectual engagement and flow in their life and authentic relationships and meaning and purpose. So the fascinating thing about that is the results give a snapshot of what the individual or where the individual thinks their well-being is at, and then it delivers where it's actually at based on their responses. And quite often there is an incongruency, which is not surprising given the fact that really our awareness level in these areas is not very conscious, So that's really the starting point, to go through that survey and get an understanding of what are the areas that you really need to prioritise, and then, invest in some coaching to embed those strategies and keep you accountable is highly valuable. So, that's really, if there's one way you can bring wellbeing into your workplace that really is meaningful and has an impact, that is the best way to do it.
Yeah, I love it. Is that part of the wellbeing framework that, obviously, Google stalked you to get a better sense of what you're doing, and you've got a great little framework that you've elicited to there, which revolves around the values and the purpose, performance, and wellbeing. Is that part of that, or is that an extension of other things that you
it fits into that model. I just made that little model up because I think they're the three key pillars that encapsulate sustainable career success and wellbeing. And that the wellbeing survey certainly falls those three little circles, but it's like when you look at overall well-being, if there's one area that's not going particularly well, then you need to make sure that the other areas are pumped up so that they can support that area that's not doing well, because it's very unusual for us to have all areas of our life ticking along perfectly all at the same time. I mean, rarely does it happen that way. So it's about, and that's where the balance comes in. It's not necessarily having balance across all of those areas, but having the other areas to balance out that area that just isn't performing as well as you'd like it to right at that point. And that's where the survey can certainly identify what's going on there.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I'd certainly be encouraging the listeners to get in touch with you. What's the best way for them to do that, Ruth?
My email address, ruth@creatinghealthycareers.com, and that's on the website. And I've got a Facebook page as well where I post a lot of content, and they can also go to the last page of my website and sign up to get that wellbeing wheel sent to them, or on the first page of the website they can book a 30-minute consult.
Brilliant. And the website address is
just creatinghealthycareers.com.
That's very easy to remember. Now, I'm going to switch up the pace a little bit here and shift into what I call the ambush, playing on the old bushy tag there, or I call it the bushfire lightning round here, Ruth. So I'm wanting to get on the trainers and on the starting block, because I'm just going to race through a couple of quickies that I think will be of great interest to people. And I just sort of want to start by asking you. Yeah, it's no time to meditate on this one. To start off, what's your favourite quote and why?
Be the change you want to see, I think, is one that I really love, because it brings it back to you having responsibility for what you create in your life and what you see in your life. A quote that I made up for my coaching business, and I hope that, a few years down the track I can look back and say that I'm living up to this, is, I want to be that wake-up call for people before they have a wake-up call. Yeah. So, that's the quote I apply to my business, and, yeah.
I love that. That's because the work that we do is very similar. I constantly saying people, you need to wake up. Because if you don't, the path you're heading down doesn't look pretty at the other end. Yeah, no, that's awesome. Yeah. What about the top book that you'd recommend? You've mentioned one during our discussion. Anything else that you'd recommend people read around this subject of career wellbeing?
Oh, career wellbeing. Well, I guess the place where I started, and I've got a whole pile of books on my little coffee table here in the office, but, find your why. What is your what? There's some books that really just bring you back to that foundational starting point to make sure that your career is aligned with basically the essence of you and who you are. So they are some, really good starting places. Yeah,
I absolutely agree. And the Find Your Why, is that the Simon Sinek book, or are we talking about something else?
Yes. Yeah, Simon Sinek.
Yeah, he's an absolute legend. Now, this one's a little bit left field, but it's something that I constantly hear people talking about. So I ask everyone this because there's a strong belief in Australia that we all pay too much tax. So what's the top thing that you've done along your journey to pay less tax, Ruth?
Let me have a think about that. I mean, just in starting my business at the moment, but that's only because the income is not up at that level that typically it has been in the past. I think in the past, I'm just trying to think, Bushy. Well, last year, it was 2 years ago when I bought my car, when I upgraded from the Datsun. I've had a few between.
I would have thought so. I can't see you in a purple Datsun now.
No. Although that's what I drove when I got into recruitment, believe it or not. So anyway, and went through a sort of lease arrangement with my car, so that at least I was paying for some of that through pre-tax dollars and that sort of thing. So back then, when I was in an employed position, that was probably the smartest thing I did.
Yeah, it's a good one. That is a good one. We get a lot of accountants sending people to us to invest in property because there's such strong tax incentives around property that people can often keep 10 or 20 grand in their pocket just by securing a property that's also improving their position over time.
I have to talk to you about that further down the track.
Yes, we'd love to do that. All right, now on an investment track here then, what's both the best and the worst piece of investment advice that you've ever received?
I'm just trying to think back to like the share when we were with Morgan and Banks and all of that with the shares, and because the company got bought and sold, TMP and Monster, and oh my God, if only we'd been given advice then about the Monster shares and to sell and when to buy, we could have all made an absolute fortune, because they skyrocketed at one point. But at the time, I can remember everyone was saying, no, just be conservative, just hold on. So, that was probably the worst advice, because they jumped, considerably up to about $100 a share or something at the time. So that would have been fantastic. Probably the best investment was to buy my house at the time, which I had for 5 years, and the growth on that investment just in that 5-year period was fantastic. And I actually sold my house to help me fund moving into my own business. So and I look at starting my business as an investment in my life. So that is yet to be determined whether that was good investment advice or not, Bushy, but I'm banking on that. And,
right, yeah. No, I love
either
that.
Either way, it's an investment in my life.
Exactly. Well, I think if the property is giving you the injection to be able to kick the business off, then that's a fantastic investment. So, and I have no doubt that backing yourself and given the passion and the energy that you bring to what you're doing is obvious to all. And I just, you're getting us to think about subjects that we don't often take the time to think about, and getting us to think about it in a different way, which I think is very refreshing. So I have no doubt that that's going to produce the fruit for you, Ruth. Final one then, in this little ambush round, what's a personal habit that contributes to your success?
Look, certainly the way I start my mornings. Now, this doesn't happen every morning, but I have noticed that when I have a great day, typically I have started my day with a particular routine, and that is with a bit of meditation and then heading down the beach for a walk. And for the first half of the walk, for the first half hour, I just walk and, soak up the atmosphere. And then for the second half hour, I typically listen to a podcast so that I'm, learning something, it's inspiring me, it's triggering some thoughts. So on the mornings that I get that routine happening, that sort of sets my day up for success.
Yeah, totally agree. It gets the mind in the right outlook. I 100% agree.
Yeah.
Just while we're on that,
have a lovely morning routine.
Sorry, Ruth.
You shared with me your morning routine the other week, and I thought that sounded lovely, and that's obviously something that works for you too.
Oh, brilliant! The morning is the precious part of the day for us, and we're pretty fortunate up here at Claremont on the homestead, on the top of the hill, looking down the valley, and waking up to the kookaburras, and then having smile time with our 4 Samoyeds, and then which is just, if you know Samoyeds, they've got permanent smiles, and they just love to sing in the morning. So it's cuddles, and then off to the gym, and then a bit of piano, and just exactly the same. I like to put all of the fun stuff in early, and then I've got a smile on my face. I'm actually ready to tackle issues as the day progresses. But coming back to you, you mentioned you like to listen to some podcasts walking along the beach. Share with us some of the podcasts that you like to listen to, Ruth.
Sure thing. The one that I first started listening to when I went into my business is she's actually a New Zealander who lives in the States, and she's called Kate Snow-Wise, and she's a psychologist, but she interviews a spectrum of people, and she's quite spiritual as well. So it really brings a great cross-section of topics along. Then I started listening to this chap, and his podcast was Can I Pick Your Brains? And he interviews a range of highly successful entrepreneurs who have these amazing life stories. So I was picking up a lot from him. And then recently, I've just started listening to the work of Esther and Abraham Hicks, which is all about the laws of attraction, which I love, and manifestation. And I totally believe in that sort of approach. And that really is about focusing on all the stuff that's going well in your life. Don't focus on what's lacking, what's missing, what goals you want. Focus on just raising your vibration by being appreciative of what you've got in your life right now. And so that was just a really timely reminder for me. And, I try and implement that, as much as I possibly can, because I've seen it work, and I've seen it work the other way when you focus on the negative stuff and you just keep bringing more of that in your life. Yeah,
I absolutely agree. It's start with gratitude is pretty much the catch cry for Sonia and I, and that because if you start with, we actually start the day before we've even got out of bed, we have a little gratitude session, and we verbally say to each other, okay, I thank you for this, thank you for that. We actually take it in turns to verbalise it, and then we spend a little bit of time actually visualising how the day ahead is going to go. So because we know what's coming up, and we're talking about it in terms of positive outcomes. So sometimes we'll have quite challenging meetings or things that we haven't done before that are making us a little bit anxious. So we actually verbalise how that's going to go, and it's amazing how. As you say, how much better we've found things tracking as a direct result of doing that in advance. It's awesome.
Well, you are engaging neuroscience there, Bush, because that is really planting the seed in your reticular activating centre, and then you start to, once you plant that seed, you actually subconsciously seek out evidence to prove that. So it is. You're putting that into action. So it's amazing. It's an interesting topic to explore with people, to really see what their beliefs are, what their thoughts are, and how they're programming their mind. Because our thoughts become our reality. So that's in essence what you're doing. You're bringing your thoughts into reality.
And we've more stumbled upon that by accident than any great research or anything, Ruth. But it really works. Well, it just works.
It does.
No, that's awesome. And I guess putting it in my sort of layman's terms, what I've found it being useful for is it becomes both a magnet as well as a compass, because a magnet in terms of if you've visualised the outcome then you're more likely to be dedicated to making that happen. But it also becomes a compass, because then if there's anything that comes along, a decision that you need to make along the way, it's like, well, is that taking me closer to where I want to be or further away? And all of a sudden you've got a much better way of making decisions that are going to benefit you, rather than sort of potentially being a pinball to whatever next comes along.
And that would probably help you establish boundaries as well in terms of what you say yes or no to. Yes,
exactly right. Absolutely it does. Yeah, that's really interesting. I could probably talk about this subject to you for hours, because I think it's got, it's a really interesting area that people haven't really delved into a lot yet. But no, that's exciting days. Now, let's talk to us about, because I'm mindful of your time, Ruth. What's next new and exciting for you and wellbeing?
Well, actually, the meeting I'm just heading off to, and actually running a workshop next week, and I'm hopeful that I can then get into the organisation and keep working on is, with an organisation whose cultural survey has showed that, there's a bit of lack of engagement there. And most organisations, I guess, when they get that, they start to throw these training programs into play. And this could be an opportunity to really sort of get in at a much deeper level that would have a more long-lasting impact on turning that culture around. So, as challenging as it might be initially, ultimately it'd be really rewarding. So hopefully, that could be the start of really making some inroads in the corporate space. Look, I really, just want to, at the moment I'm coaching a few individuals one-on-one to really help them change tact in their career, and, it's planting seeds for the future, because those people will ultimately get senior roles, and then hopefully they'll realise the benefit of the coaching that they've had and want to bring that into their organisation. So at the moment, it's really sort of looking for inroads into organisations that are congruent with what I'm doing. But, it's interesting how opportunities pop up, and they all look a little bit different. So it's hard to, when you say career wellbeing, it's such a broad spectrum of things. So it's fascinating to see who's on board with it and who's willing to invest in it.
Yeah, absolutely. No, brilliant. Well, look, really appreciate your time. I think you've scratched the surface there on a whole number of areas that we could delve into in more detail, and I'd like the opportunity to do so on future Get Invested episodes, because I know there's a lot of career-minded entrepreneurs and time-poor professionals that would really be opening their eyes and ears to what you've been talking about. And I will certainly encourage them to be getting in touch with you, Ruth, as you've already indicated to us. So look, keep up the fantastic work. We'll remain in touch, and really appreciate you giving you some of your valuable time to us today.
Thanks, Bushy. Thanks for the conversation.
Excellent. Thanks, Ruth. Bye for now.
Bye.
Well, freedom fighters, how good was that? To get a summary of all this investment gold in the show notes, just email me on hello@khgroup.com.au. That's hello@khgroup.com.au. Or check us out at www.bushymartin.com.au/Get Invested. I look forward to joining you next week for another episode of the Get Invested podcast. So thanks for listening, and as always, dream as if you live forever and live as if you'll die tomorrow.